This is a recording ahead of time of Daf Yomi from Motzaei Shabbat, Parshat Bahalotcha, which is Masechet Shevuot Daf Mem Daled 44, nearing the end of Masechet Shavuot. And so we're going to start today on what I think is where we're going to get to on Friday, Daf Mem Gimel Amabet, where the Gemara says the word Tznan. So this is around 12 lines or so from the bottom. So the discussion is in the middle of a sugya. And if you recall yesterday, or the Daf before, in Daf Mem Gimel, we heard about this really interesting halacha from Shmuel. Shmuel said that someone who borrows, say, 1,000 zuz, Shmuel said, he lends 1,000 zuz, and he gives a mashkon, right? So a mashkon, we think about a mashkon often in sort of a guarantee as give something of the value so that if you don't pay back, they can collect from the mashkon. But clearly, there's another function of mashkon, which we'll see more of today, which is as either a partial payment or just a remembrance, just something to designate that I gave you, you gave me a loan. I can't deny it because I'm holding on to something, not that's worth the loan, but that I wouldn't otherwise have unless we had this transaction. Shmuel said yesterday that if you lose the mashkon, right? Ruvain lends Shimon $1,000. Shimon gives Ruvain a handle, right? Something very small value to be the official mashkon. And Ruvain loses that mashkon, then Ruvain can't collect the loan because the mashkon was there connected the loan. Once you lose the mashkon, you lose the loan. When we asked about that yesterday, but the question the Gemara says today is from our Mishnah, right? Our Mishnah, this is the Mishnah we had a couple of days ago, says Tanan now. Let's say, remember, our Mishnah is in the context of a machloket about a shvua. So in our Mishnah, the person said, Sela hilviticha alav, I lent you a sela, which is four dinar, v'shekel hayashaveh. And the mashkon that you had, so Ruvain lent a sela to Shimon. Shimon gave a mashkon to Ruvain. Ruvain loses the mashkon. And now the question is, how much was that mashkon worth, and how much does Ruvain still collect from Shimon, if anything? So Ruvain says, I lent you a sela, and the mashkon you gave me was worth a shekel, and so I lost the mashkon, so I lost a shekel worth, but you still owe me another shekel. The halam, and the other party, the borrower says, Loki, that's not right. Elasela vitani alav, you lent me a sela, ushlosha dinin hayishava, but I gave you a mashkon worth 3 dinar, worth 3/4 of it. So I only owe you 1 dinar. So basically, the lender saying you owe me 2 dinar, the borrower saying I owe 1 dinar. So we said that's modum and mixad, and you're chayav to make a shvua. But I don't get it. According to Shmuel, if you lose the mashkon, you lose the loan. Leimaleha kabilte. According to Shmuel, the Mishnah makes no sense. Why are you suing him for anything? Say, you lost my mashkon, there's no loan. Answers the Gemara, clearly, matnitin would have to be the parish, where you explicitly said, this is Rashi's Girsa, explicitly said, when I give you the mashkon, it's not keneged the loan, it's partial payment. In which case, whatever's lost in the mashkon is the payment. But Shmuel, b'delo parish, Shmuel is referring to where you don't explicitly say anything one way or the other. And we understand in that case that the mashkon is keneged the whole loan. That's what Shmuel's saying. Okay, so our Mishnah is not a proof. But what about the following Braita, where there's a machloket Tanaim, which seems to revolve around this question? What does the Braita say? Hamalvet chaviro mashkon. Person lends money to someone else on a mashkon, meaning Ruvain gave money to Shimon as a loan. Shimon gave Ruvain a mashkon, v'avada mashkon, and Ruvain loses this mashkon. Says the Braita, Yishava yitot motav. Ruvain should swear that he lost it, and that it wasn't something that he kept in his basement because he wants to keep it, and he gets to collect his loan. Divrei Rebbe Eliezer. And Rebbe Akiva says, no. Yachol Yom Shiomarlo, Shimon can say to Ruvain, Klum Helvitani ala mashkon, you only lent me money in exchange for this mashkon. The Elvana mashkon avdu motecha. You lost the mashkon, you lost your money. Now we're gonna explain this whole Braita, but it seems at this point to be a question of whether the mashkon is connected the whole loan, or the mashkon is connected, I don't know, just what you paid for it. So now the Braita finishes, before we get to explaining this, Aval hamalveh elev zuz bishtar. Let's say Ruvain lends Shimon 1,000 zuz with a document, and he also gives him a mashkon. Haniach mashkon biyado. Everyone agrees that what's the point of a mashkon in that case, right? The mashkon clearly is not needed to prove that you borrowed money, because you have a shtar that says you borrowed money. So everybody agrees in that case, if you give a mashkon, the mashkon is actually the exchange for the loan. And divrei akol avada mashkon avdu motav. Everyone agrees that if you lose the mashkon, you lose your money. Again, not so clear what we're talking about yet. Says the Gemara, Hechidam. what's the case here where Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer disagree, right? Meaning, how much was the mashkon worth? Either shavi shir zuzi, right? So if, let's say, the mashkon is worth the exact same amount as the loan, so Ruvain lent Shimon $1,000. Shimon gave Ruvain his gold watch that's worth $1,000 as a mashkon, right? So then Rabbi Eliezer said in the Braita that you swear that you lost the watch and you get your loan back. Why? My time at Rabbi Eliezer, top of Daf Mem Daled Amud Aleph. How can Rabbi Eliezer explain that you can still collect? He gave you a watch, it's worth $1,000. You lost the watch. Why can you still collect? Right? Ella must be b'delo shavi shir zuzi. The mashkon is not worth the amount of the loan. So the loan was for $1,000. Mashkon was worth $100, right? So there, Rabbi Eliezer says, okay, you can swear and collect the rest, and that's not like Shmuel. And Rabbi Akiva seems to say, like Shmuel, that no, if you lose the mashkon, you lose everything. B'shmuel kamiflagi. So this Braita seems to not support Shmuel, but show you that there's Tanaim arguing in Shmuel's opinion, in Shmuel's Shita. And it's not necessarily a proof from the Braita because the case might be different. It could be, but the lo shavi. If the mashkon is not worth the loan, so the mashkon is worth $100, but the loan is worth 1,000, nobody goes with Shmuel that if you lose a mashkon, you lose the loan. The mashkon is keneged its value. You lose $100 mashkon, maybe you lose $100 from the loan, but you don't lose the whole loan. So it's not, no one agrees with Shmuel, we're saying. Hacha b'deshavi shir zuzi, here it's where the mashkon is worth the same amount as the loan. So you're saying, why would Rebbe Eliezer say, if you lost the mashkon, you lost a gold watch worth $1,000, that you can say, well, I don't have to give you the watch back and I want my loan back, right? It's kid Rabbi Yitzchak kamiflagi. Dam Rabbi Yitzchak, you know what Rabbi Yitzchak says? Minayin lebalchov shekone mashkon. How do you know that the balchov acquires a mashkon, right? Meaning that if a person, Ruvain, again, lends money to Shimon, Shimon gives Ruvain the watch, that Ruvain actually owns Shimon's watch, which means that if it's stolen or lost, Ruvain's out of luck. It's like his own thing. You know, I can't, unless I have insurance, if my thing gets stolen or lost, I can't go complain to somebody else, right? If I'm a shomer, it's very different, right? So the question revolves here around whether Ruvain is a watcher of this mashkon, in which case, if he's a shomer chinam and it gets stolen, then he's not responsible, or is it his thing? And it's Rabbi Yitzchak said that a balchov is kohen the mashkon, meaning the balchov, Ruvain, who lent money in this case, owns the mashkon. And how do we know, what's the proof for that? Shenemar, the Torah says, a very interesting pasuk. It says, remember the whole case here is where someone lends money and then they take a guarantee. And it says you have to give it back, right? If it's clothing, if it's his bed, if it's his mattress, you got to bring it back at night when he needs it. And it says, it will be a tzedakah, it'll be a righteous thing for you to give it back to him. It says, if it's his, I mean, if Shimon never gave up ownership, then why is it a righteous thing to give it back to him? You have to give it back to him. It must be that really Shimon gave it to Ruvain and Ruvain owns it, but he's being generous, Torah says you have to be, by giving it back at night. Says Rabbi Yitzchak, if Ruvain, the lender, doesn't acquire the mashkan, stakam minaylo, right? What's the tzedakah in giving it back? Mikan balchov shekone mashkan. This is a proof that a balchov is kone the mashkan, and so therefore this is the machloket. According to Rebbe Eliezer, that's not true. He disagrees with Rabbi Yitzchak, and he says the balchov is not kone the mashkan. The balchov is a shomer on the mashkan. If the mashkan is stolen, the balchov just has to swear that it was stolen, that he didn't hide it and keep it, and then he can collect the whole loan. And the poor borrower is out his watch and his loan. But Rabbi Akiva agrees with Rabbi Yitzchak and says that no, he's an owner. If you lose it, you're responsible. Says we're okay. So now you said that Shmuel's not a machloket tanaim, but Lema Rabbi Yitzchak tanaim. So now Rabbi Yitzchak, which is an opinion that we quote all over the place, you're telling me now that Rabbi Eliezer disagrees with it. But Tizbara says, where is that really what's going on here? Because the truth is that Rabbi Yitzchak does not apply to this case. Right? The case in our Braita was where Ruvain lent Shimon $1,000. Shimon gave Ruvain a watch at the time of the loan. But that was not Rabbi Yitzchak's case. Amar da'am Rabbi Yitzchak was only talking about a case, shemishkano shelo b'shat halva'ah, where you gave the mashkon not at the time of the halva'ah, meaning you lent money on Sunday, and on Tuesday you came back and said, look, I need something from you to prove that I have it, and they give you something. So then it's a whole different story. If you give a mashkon not connected to the halva'ah, that's where Rabbi Yitzchak says the balchov is kona the mashkon. But mishkano b'shat halva'ah mi amar. If you gave a mashkon at the time of the loan, did Rabbi Yitzchak say his halacha? Ella says the Gemara, the truth is you're right. There's a big difference. Mishkano shelo b'shat halva'ah. If you give a mashkon when it's not at the time of the initial loan, right? Days later, weeks later, kuli amalo pligi it's later, Rabbi Yitzchak. Everyone agrees with Rabbi Yitzchak that the mashkon is owned and responsibility of the balchov. So if Reuven lends money to Shimon and a week later, Reuven says to Shimon, I want my loan back, or I want you to give me something, or for whatever reason, Shimon then gives him a mashkon. Reuven owns that mashkon. It's charity if he gives it back at night, which he has to do. And if he loses it, it's his loss. But hacha b'mishkano b'shat halvato. Here, the question is when you gave a mashkon at the time of the halva, right? So it's no longer at staka. But the point here is that shomer aveda kamifligi. The machloket is what's the responsibility of quote unquote a shomer aveda, someone who finds something and they're watching it, right? So meaning they don't own it, right? It's not their own thing, basically. Now, again, the mashkon, we're debating whether it's their own thing, but it's not a priori their own thing. And the question is, what is the machloket? What is the level of responsibility of that person? I'm walking down the street, I find a duck that's wandering down the road. I know it belongs to someone. I pick it up to watch it in my house. Am I a shomer chinam? Because I'm not being paid to do this. Or am I shomer sachar? Remember, we talked about shomer sachar would be because at the time that you're osek in the mitzvah of Shabbat Aveda, you don't have to do other mitzvah. So I don't have to go give charity or go march in the latest protest or whatever thing I would do otherwise. I'm free from that. So maybe that's some reward, right? So the machloket here is when you have a mashkon bishat halva'ah, so it's not automatically owned by the balchov. And the question is, what is the status of shomer aveda kamiflagi? Person watching an aveda, no, this is not an aveda, but this is a mashkon. What is the status of that person? The itmar, as we learned in a statement from the Amoraim, shomer aveda, a person who finds something in the street, and again, we're saying it's the same case here, quote unquote, a shomer aveda. Rabba amar shomer chinam. Says Rabba, you're not getting paid to do that. You are considered a shomer chinam, and therefore, if it gets stolen or lost, you're not responsible. And the same would be true about a mashkon, which is why Rabbi Eliezer says in the Braita, you swear that it was stolen or lost, and you don't have to pay, and you get your money back. And Rav Yosef says, "Kishomer sachar." Rav Yosef says, no. You're a shomer sachar, and we've talked about many times before, because at the time that you're being osek in taking care of this aveda or this mashkon, you don't have to do other mitzvot, so you save money. And so you're getting paid. It's a small amount, maybe, but it's a significant small amount of money that makes you a shomer sachar. Says Gemara, okay, so that's fine. But Leimad Rav Yosef Tanai. But now you're telling me that what Rav Yosef said is machloket Tanaim, meaning that we can prove it from a Braita. Says Gemara again, okay, we will come back from that. It's not the same thing as Shomer Aveda. B'Shomer Aveda, Kuliyama Itlu Rav Yosef. In fact, by Shomer Aveda, everybody holds like Rav Yosef that that's a Shomer Sachar, okay, who would be chayav, remember, for Gneva of Aveda. But Hacha b'mal v'tzarech the mashkon k'miflagi. The question is, do you have to do a mashkon when you do a malveh? Meaning, is this considered to be a mitzvah? So Mar Savar mitzvah kav, and Mar's one opinion, Rabbi Akiva's opinion is that, in fact, you don't have to do that, right? And, there's the cases where whether the malveh is allowed, it needs the mashkon, right? In a case where the malveh says, remember the malveh is Ruvain here, he says to Shimon, listen, I'm going to a fancy event. Can I wear your watch? I'll take $10 off the loan for every day I wear your watch, or the equivalent, right? Or can I use your car and pay? Obviously, it's ribbit. It's interest if you don't pay him back. But he's gonna compensate him. But the question is, if the malva needs the mashkon, what happens in that case, right? Do you still call it a mitzvah? Okay. So Mar Savar mitzvah kaver. Rabbi Akiva says, yep, it's still doing a mitzvah, and since it's still doing a mitzvah, you're still a shomer sachar, because you are basically being paid by not having to do other mitzvot at the time that you are watching this mashkin. And since you're being paid, you are chayav to watch it more carefully, and you're chayav for gneva v'aveda. And Rabbi Eliezer holds Mar Savar lav mitzvah ka'avid, because you are actually using it. Essentially, you're no longer purely a mitzvah, because you're essentially a renter in some way, and you're getting benefit from it. And so it's not a mitzvah, and so you're a shomer chinam, right? Because you wouldn't be putter from another mitzvah. So you're a shomer chinam, not a renter, which is a whole different question. You're a shomer chinam, and because of that, you are not responsible for Gneva Vaveda, and if you swear that it was lost or stolen, then you are pater. So that is the machloket in this specific case. Says the Gemara, before we get to our Mishnah, Lema Kitana. There's one other indication. We are at the 6th line of Daf Mem Dalad Amabet. Lema Kitana. There seems to be Machloket Tanaim in a Gemara in Bava Metzia that discusses this question of Shmuel. What is the Bright to talk about? It talks about a very interesting case, right? Remember, usually if a person lends money to somebody else and Shemitah comes, Shemitah negates the loan. So if I lend you $1 million, Shemitah comes and Shemitah is over at the end of Shemitah, and you no longer have to pay off that money, right? There's an exception where someone has, and we use this nowadays as Prusbol in this whole thing, where the loan is either being held in Bezdin, or if you've given a mashkon here. So says the Braita, Hamalvet Chavero la mashkon. Reuven lends money to Shimon on a mashkon. So Reuven gives $1,000 to Shimon. Shimon gives him the watch in exchange. V'nichnesa Shemitah, right? And Shemitah comes. Says the Braita, Afal pi she'enu shaveh ala palga, even though the watch is only worth half the loan, eino mishamet. Shemitah does not cancel that loan because it's as if he's already paid it back, at least partially. And so it's not an open loan that Shemitah would cancel, even though the mashkon is not worth the whole loan. Divrei Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, which is a lot similar to what Shmuel said, that even a partial value of a mashkon abrogates the whole loan, right? And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi Omer in the Mishnah, in the Braita in Bava Metzia, Imhaya mashkino keneged chovo ino mishamet. If the mashkon is worth the loan, then essentially it's as if you already paid back the loan and Shemitah doesn't cancel it. But in lav mishamet, the mashkon is not worth the loan. Shemitah cancels the loan. Now says in my eno mishamet amar Tanakama. The Tanakama said that Shemitah does not cancel the loan, right? No. Right, said, what was the words? That Shemitah does not cancel the loan. Now, what does that mean? If he means it doesn't cancel the loan that's worth the watch, remember the watch here he said was worth half, right? So the loan's 1,000, the watch is 500. If he means he doesn't cancel the 500, so then what's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is coming to say that even the 500 is canceled? Kenegdo nami mishamet. Mechad Rabbi Yehuda Nasi savar kenegdo nami mishamet. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is saying that even though you're holding a mashkon, the whole loan gets canceled. Elamaitaf is mashkon. Then what's the value of the mashkon? It's one thing to argue about whether the mashkon cancels the whole loan or only part of the loan. But you're saying now that maybe according to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi doesn't cancel any of the loan. Elalav keneged kulo. It must be then, in fact, what Reb Shimon Gamliel is saying is that even a mashkon worth $100 not cancels, but is as if you already collected a loan, so it's not mishamet of $1,000, and that's Shmuel kamiflagi. They're arguing about Shmuel. So therefore, you see from this Braita that the opinion of Shmuel is a machloket tanaim, Reb Shimon Gamliel on one side and Reb Yehuda Nasi on the other side. Says Lo, I have an alternate explanation. Olam kinegdo. It could, in fact, be referring to nobody agrees with Shmuel, which, as you've seen throughout our Gemara, we keep coming out that no one agrees with Shmuel. So just to point that out. But really, no one agrees with Shmuel. And the question really is that you have a mashkon. Well, I mean, Shmuel's not relevant here, but they don't necessarily agree with Shmuel. You have a mashkon that's worth the amount of the complete loan. I lent you $1,000. I'm holding, Reuven lent Shimon $1,000. Shimon gave him a watch that's worth $1,000. Shemitah comes along. Tanakama savar kenegdo. Tanakama says, okay, you have $1,000 watch. It's as if you already collected the loan partially. Shemitah doesn't cancel the loan. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi savar, no, I disagree. Even though Reuven's holding a watch, the loan's canceled. He's got to give back the watch and he loses his loan. Kenegdo nami mishamet. You're going to say, well, then what's the point of a mashkon? Lamai toughest le mashkon. What's the value of the mashkon if it doesn't even guarantee the loan? Answers Rabbi Yehuda Nasi in the Gemara for him, lezichron dvarim ba'alma. A mashkon may be something very different. A mashkon may be not collateral at all, right? It's not there to pay back the loan. It's there to give a memory or a recognition that I borrowed money from you. So that, like the case, of course, in the Torah of Yehuda and Tamar, right? It wasn't there necessarily to pay back. It was that why would that woman have Yehuda's thing unless he owed him some money, right? And so therefore, the mashka might be very similar to that, where it's actually not payment at all. And so therefore, if Shemitah comes along, the loan's canceled because you didn't pay back any of the loan. But the mashkon is there to remember that I owe you something and that I can never deny it completely. Continues the Gemara now on Daf Mem Daled on Mabet. to the new Mishnah. Kol HaNishba'in Shebetorah. This is a very long Mishnah. I don't think we're going to finish it in this sitting, but I'll go far along. Well, we'll definitely finish the Amud, but we'll go along in the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, for now, what parak is the seventh parak, right? We've been talking about all kinds of different Shavuot. Everyone's an expert in all the different Shavuot. For many prakim. Says the Gemara, Kol HaNishba'in Shebetorah. All of the cases, no, of course, there's going to be exceptions, right? But almost all of the cases where the Torah says you make a shvuah, they're usually nishba'in v'lo mishalmim. Almost always you swear and you don't pay, right? Reuven goes to Shimon and says, you owe me $1,000. Shimon says, I owe you 500. You pay 500. You swear that you don't owe the other 500 and you're patur from paying. So almost always, shvuah in the Torah is a shvuah to exempt you from paying. But there are some exceptions, and that's what our parak and our Mishnah is going to talk about. Elo nishba'in v'notlin. There's some exceptions where you swear and you collect based on the shvuah. Hasachir. We're going to go through all these in the Gemara, so don't worry. But a sachir, someone you hired to do work for you. At the end of the day, the sachir says you didn't pay me. The owner says I paid you. The sachir gets to swear you didn't pay me. You owe me $100. Hanigzal. Someone who's robbed, right? Meaning they see someone go into your house, they steal from you. The guy leaves the house. The next day you say, he stole from me. He says, I didn't take anything. It's the victim who gets to swear and collect. Hanechbal, someone who's beat up, right? Someone walks into a house and he comes out with a black eye and he says, that person hit me. The person says, I don't know what you're talking about. You bumped into the wall. The nechbal, the victim, swears in that case. Shekinegdo chashural shvuah. This is the case we had earlier, where the other party can't make a shvuah because they have a bad reputation. So then we turn the shvuah over to the other party. So an example that I gave of modeh b'miktzat, Reuven says Shimon owes him $1,000. Shimon says, I owe you 500. Usually Shimon would pay 500 and swear that he doesn't owe the other 500. But if he's on a blacklist and do not make a shvuah list, he can't do that. And so Reuven can then swear that he is owed another $500 and he can collect it. And the final case in this set is Chenvani al Pinkaso. Chenvani is a storekeeper. At the end of the day, they go to the Makolet and they look at how much do you owe, and the guy says, I paid. The normal thing is that the Chenvani keeps a good track in his Pinkas, in his writing book, and he can say, I swear that the person owes me money, and he gets to collect. Says the Gemara, let's explain all these cases. Hasachir, Ketzad. This is the Mishnah, sorry. What's the Sachir? Amarlo, so the owner, the Balabai, we call him, the worker, says to the Balabai, you owe me $100, give me my wages for today. Who amenatati? And the owner says, I already paid you. Halamar lo natalti. The worker says, I didn't take it. Hu nushpava notel. The worker is allowed to swear and take, which is unusual. We'll see why in the Gemara we make an exception in this case. Rabbi Yehuda says, I disagree. He has to admit to part of it, like every other shvuah of modeh b'miktzat. If the owner, the balabait says, I don't owe you anything, I paid you completely, he doesn't get to swear. Ketzad. What's the example of Rabbi Yehuda? Amarlo, if the worker says, Tein li skari, 50 dinar sheshim yadcha, pay me my 50 dinar. Kbalti dinar zav, I already paid you a dinar zav, which is 25, right? So I already paid you half of that. So then he's admitting to half and he's denying half. So that's the first case of sachir. The second case in the Mishnah is nigzal, right? A case where someone steals. We are, 15 or 12 lines on the bottom, right near where Rashi on the parak starts on the left of Maitzir Tadav. Nigzal, case where he was stolen from. There are witnesses who say that they saw Shimon walk into Reuven's house to take something without permission. Okay, take a mashkon. Hu amar kli nitalti. So Reuven comes the next day and says, Shimon stole my TV. He took my kelim. Hu amar lo nitalti. And Shimon says, I walked out of there with nothing. I went in, it's true, but I didn't come out with anything. Hu nishma v'notel. So Reuven gets to swear and to collect in this case. And again, Rabbi Yehuda Omer ad shtei sham miktzat hoda'ah, that in fact it's only the case if Shimon admits to part of it. Ketzad amar lo shnei kelim netalta. Reuven says you stole 2 televisions. Hu amar lo netalti al echad. The only took one. Then he's chayav shvuah, and then the victim makes the shvuah. So Rabbi Yehuda agrees that the victim makes the shvuah, but he disagrees that you can do it with a complete denial. Third case in the Mishnah was nechbal, a person who was wounded. Ketzad, what's the case? Again, People testify that Reuven walked into the house, he was no black eyes, no broken bones. Yatzach Chavol, he comes out battered. Marlo, so now Reuven says, Chavalta bi, Shimon beat me up. Who Amar? And Shimon says, Look, Chavalti, I didn't do anything to you. Reuven is believed. He has sort of a chazakah here. He could swear and he could pay. He collects the damages that a person would get for being abused. Rabbi Yehuda says again the same thing. It's only the case if Shimon admits to part of it. Reuven says he gave me 2 broken bones. He only broke 1 bone. So that is the case where Reuven would be allowed to make a shua and collect. The next case, let me keep going because it's early and we can do this. When the other party can't make a shua because they're a suspect, right? They're chashud on the reliability of making a shua. Ketzad, what's the case? So turn to Daf Mem Hey Amud Aleph. Says the Mishnah, Echad shvuat ha'idut ve'echad shvuat ha'pikadon. This refers to all of the cases of whether you're required shvuat ha'idut. So I go to someone and say, you saw testimony from me, I want you to testify, right? A whole parak about that. Usually the person has to either say, I'll say a testimony, or I swear I don't know it. Or a chachvat pikadon, where someone lent the pikadon, he says, give me back my pikadon, he said it's lost. I feel shvuat shav. The truth is, even a shvuat shav, we'll see what the shvuat shav is, right? This means a person, who is found to lie about any of these things. So they lied about shvuat edut, they lied about shvuat pikadon, which involve other people. Even if they lied about shvuat shav, which doesn't involve another person, right? I said, I swear I ate, eggs for breakfast, and it wasn't true. It's not a shvuat shav, it's a bitoy. But, shav, I saw 5 rainbows or whatever. Now, let's say one of the parties here plays dice. Remember, playing dice is a isur drabanan. We don't trust you to make edut. Or malveh beribit, or they lend money. We talked before ribit drabanan, right? Or mafrichei yonim, they race their pigeons, or socharei shviyat, or they do work on shmita again, all drabanans. In those cases, shekenegdo nishba v'notel. The other party makes a shvua and collects. So again, let's say Reuven goes over to Shimon and says, you owe me $1,000. Shimon says, I owe you 500. Usually Shimon would swear saying, I don't owe it to you. But if Shimon is a dice player, he can't swear, and Reuven gets to swear and collect. Hayushnehem chashudim. Now let's say they're both chashud. Let's say they're playing dice together, right? So Reuven says to Shimon, you owe me $1,000. Shimon denies 500. Neither Shimon or Reuven can make a shvua. So the shvua goes back to its place, meaning it goes back to Shimon is supposed to make it. He can't make it, and therefore he's got to pay. We'll talk about this in the Gemara. Divrei Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Meir says, I disagree. Yechloku. In that situation, they split, and you don't actually collect the whole thing, but you collect part of it, because really, if he swore, he would pay nothing. If he doesn't swear, he pays 500. You do 250. Anyways, this is a discussion we had before, and we will, of course, have more in the Gemara. I'm going to stop here to conclude Daf Mem Daled, which is 6 lines from the top. The 5th case of the Mishnah, which was Chenvani al Pinkaso, and Galwin, I pick it up from there in the next recording, which I hope to do later today, which will be Sunday's Daf. Thank you, everyone. I hope some people hear this, and Yashar Koach.